Welcome to the Lever Movement Podcast. I am your host, Brad Miles, the co-founder of Lever. And with me today, we have a special guest, Coach JT. JT, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm doing well. Yeah, very well. Looking forward to the conversation. We've kind of traded a few, back and forth recently. And some of the things that you said definitely piqued our interest, and we thought it'd be good to bring you on to share some of what you're doing with the other coaches that are listening to the podcast. But before we get into that, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So right now I am in the middle of my third season here at Goucher College, located in Towson, Maryland. I'm the associate head cross country track and field coach. Primarily I work with endurance events, so 800 and up. And then I'm slowly, and this year sort of started adding more sprints and, a couple other events under my belt as well to help out with those and fill in some gaps where we can. But so far, it's been a pretty fun ride. We've had a little bit of success, and I'm excited to kind of keep it going. Over the past year or so, Lever has been a pretty big tool in my arsenal, and right now I think it's probably one of my top tools.
Awesome. So before we get into that, what would you how did you get into this coaching position that you're in today? What's some of your background? Were you an athlete yourself?
Yeah, so I actually competed for 5 years at Stevenson University right down the street, greater Baltimore area. And Eric Kamadeka was actually my head coach, who is now our head coach here at Goucher. So I competed 5 years there. And then he actually took the role here at Goucher in January of 2020. And I actually came over to help him out. Obviously, a lot of stuff happened in 2020, and I kind of ventured out on my own. And I ended up coaching for a little bit at Valparaiso University in very, very northwestern Indiana. And then from there, I went to Bradley University. And then a few years ago, Coach Kamadeka called me back up, and I found my way back here to the Baltimore area to get this thing rolling with him at Goucher again.
Very cool. And Goucher is part of the Landmark Conference, which is, correct, primarily Maryland, Pennsylvania, school in Connecticut. Is that right?
There's one school in Connecticut. I think they're an affiliate member with football. Yeah.
All right. No, very good. And so let's just jump into it then. You kind of mentioned that you coach anywhere from mainly distance, but 800 up, even dabble with the 100-meter sprinters occasionally. But yeah, I guess kind of walk us through, first and foremost, what was one of the reasons why you bought the Lever system for your team in the first place?
Yeah, so I think something about us is we're always trying to find ways to, I don't want to use the word get an advantage, but how can we kind of be a little cutting edge? How can we find something new and innovative to help push us forward, help push the program forward? And I guess more importantly, what can help us run faster at the end of the day on Saturdays and then Fridays, meet day. So I'm not 100% sure how we came across it, but we came across your guys' website. Somehow we just kind of started looking around. And we were really kind of getting into it. We decided we went and we bought you guys' basic system, a couple pairs of shorts. And initially we honestly thought it was going to be something that we could use to kind of bring people back from injury or use it as like a recovery tool. And then I would say probably within a couple months, I very quickly learned, okay, we can use this for a lot more than just recovery or coming back from injury or some kind of progression or whatnot. And then we started using it with some of our sprinters, some of our jumpers, even some of our throwers, trying to find ways to take some loads off them in their everyday training. More specifically, I guess, for like the middle distance group, I really kind of found a way to start using it for a lot of our high-end endurance work, especially those event groups or those runners that are doing like the 400, 800.
Yeah, no, that's good. I think we hear that story a lot, right? So the space, like body weight support, being able to remove a percentage of your body weight, has primarily been, I guess, thought of first for like elites only, that only elites really need to use it, which is quickly changing for every athlete to realize that they can get a lot of benefit from the system themselves, but then also that it was just a return from injury tool and a rehab tool. And thankfully, that's also changing. And the mindset is now shifting a lot more towards using it as a performance device. And so was there anything in your history after using the system that led to that evolution of seeing it as a just return from injury tool and rehab to, hey, no, I actually can use this for performance? Like, anything you read? Was it education? Was it literally just having your hands on the system and realizing the benefits of it? Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, so I think it's certainly a combination. I'm really, really big into research, and I love kind of getting into the science and figuring out how everything is the way it is. Obviously, of course, like if you heard about the anti-gravity treadmills and, treadmills that can take weight off, obviously this is a much more affordable option, a lot more doable for us. And I think I really started to think about how we can use this more as a performance tool as we had one of our athletes coming off of injury. And I started to realize, like, we've gotten some really good high quality workouts in on this. Why don't we try sprinkling it in a little bit more throughout some of our cycles as true workouts? And kind of started really, really small, maybe once or twice a week, and then kind of grew and, okay, so let's use this almost on a weekly or a microcycle basis and really try to figure out, all right, how can we use this to kind of move the needle, especially on that endurance end for some of our athletes.
Yes. Before we kind of get into like pure performance side of things, you mentioned you used it at first with an athlete coming back from an injury. What were some of those like early workouts that you did with that athlete as they were coming back? And if you can share what type of injury they had too that they were coming back from, that'd be really helpful as well.
Right. So this athlete in particular was a 200, 400 guy. And he just had, in the previous history, doesn't have a lot of issues with his hamstring, which I think is pretty common, especially for a 200, 400 guy. And it really started out just really basic, let's figure out how we can jog on this thing. Then let's kind of increase the intensity. Let's try to simulate some hill sprints, that kind of thing. And slowly increasing the intensity on that. And then it got to a point where we were doing our full sprint tempos on the lever. And that's when it really kind of clicked, like, okay, maybe we can use this for a little bit more. And then from there, I also had another 400, 800 guy who, as far as his volume, he couldn't really handle a whole lot of volume. So then it was just simple. Let's go on the lever. Let's just get some extra volume on the day with this. And then that kind of progressed. All right, now let's throw it in every microcycle and let's use it for our high-end endurance stuff.
Can you explain what you mean by microcycle for your Goucher program?
Yeah. So I mean, we have a lot of stuff going on as far as our different cycles. But right now, like our sprinters, they're on a 14-day cycle, meaning that every 14 days, we're going to hit a whole slew of different things. Our middle distance group, they're on a 9-day cycle. And that really is kind of nuanced to the event and based on stuff that I think that we can improve on and whatnot.
Cool. No, thank you for that explanation. And then also for a 200, 400 guy, you mentioned full sprint tempos. What is a full sprint tempo for a 200, 400 guy?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm a very strong believer. I know maybe it's a little bit controversial, but I'm a very strong believer that there is a strong endurance component especially in a 400 and even a little bit in a 200. So anyone that I believe at least wants to be successful in 200 or 400, they have to have some kind of endurance capacity. Now they don't need to be like, 1500 or 5K guys that are going out for 30-minute tempos or whatever. But, I think, if we can extend our endurance capacities up to being able to do close to a 60-second tempo, and with the sprinters, their tempos are a lot faster than I think traditional endurance or distance athletes tempos are going to be. But if we can extend that ability, I think it's only going to lead us to be more successful in those longer sprint events.
Yeah. That's a good point. What was, when you do let's say a full speed tempo with some of the shorter distance guys, what percentage of body weight, how many pounds are you removing for an athlete to do like a tempo like that?
Yeah. So I think that's the other really nice thing about the lever is that one, you can have the app and you can really measure it. And all of them have the app on their phones and they kind of hook it up and they measure it. But what I've done is everything in our training is very, very progressive. So with that, it's really no different. So we'll take close to as close to 40% of our body weight off as possible. Obviously, it depends on the person and how heavy they are and whatnot. And then, by the end of the season, if we can get that to be closer to 10 or 15, and we're still doing the same paces and maybe even more volume, you can see that needle has certainly improved. So what I might do is, those first 3 weeks, maybe we're at 40% of our body weight and we're doing 3 by 15 seconds at whatever their sprint tempo pace is. And then the next 3 weeks, maybe I'll either extend the volume. So maybe I'll go to 20 seconds, or what I might do is I might cut down that percentage of body weight that's being taken off by the lever. So it's all very progressive and sort of leading down to that goal.
Yeah, that is really neat. So kind of speed stays the same throughout that season. It's still over speed, but you are making it tougher just by reducing the amount of weight or increasing the amount of weight they're running at.
Yeah, absolutely. And, now if I would have someone that's coming back from injury, thankfully we're not in that situation right now, but, it's a very real possibility. I think I would approach it a little different. I would approach it very similar to that. If we only have 8 weeks until a championship meet, week 1, we're going race pace, but we're jacking that percentage as high up as we possibly can. Mm-hmm. And then each session, maybe we're taking a little bit of that percentage off to try to get, as close to that goal at race pace as possible.
Yeah, it's really good. So kind of just talking about middle distance, maybe your 800 guys or so, is it very similar type training to what you mentioned for the 200, 400 guys?
So the 800 is my favorite event. I think that's where we have a lot of success here at Goucher. So we have a pretty complex 800 training system. And obviously, as like a lot of success in the 800 is going to be able to have pretty high-end aerobic capacity, aerobic abilities. A lot of really good 800 runners can mix it up in a 5K. But at the same time, a lot of really good 800 runners can also mix it up in a 4x4 or a 400. And it's really, really hard to kind of balance the sprint end and the endurance end. So being able to take a little bit of that load off and do some of our true endurance workouts on the lever has really, really kind of helped us. Something that I've kind of been experimenting with a little bit last season, but I definitely this season, and I know it's kind of a buzzword, but double thresholds and being able to do those on the lever and kind of mix it up and doing stuff like, I don't know if you've heard of Canova special block, but it's kind of similar to a double threshold and doing stuff like that on the lever. And it just gets kind of nuanced on how we set it up, but the lever's been huge for doing that stuff. For
those sessions specifically, are you doing both of those on the lever, or are you only doing, one outside and then the double on the lever system?
Yeah. So, I mean, short answer, it depends on who it is. Okay. For most of them, they're going to do both on the lever. Okay. I think the ones that can handle it, we'll do the morning session on the lever, and we'll come back in the PM and we'll do it on the track or on the road or wherever we're at for that day.
Okay. So your treadmill is getting some good use at Goucher.
It's getting a lot of use, yes.
Yeah, no, that's good. And then, I mean, just from a practicality standpoint too, how are you just scheduling this out with athletes? Because treadmill training is probably a lot more, singular than like having a team atmosphere, right? And so how do you guys balance that?
Right. So, I mean, at this point, we've kind of got it down to a pretty good system. We have 3 different lever systems, 2 of the traditional levers, and we just got a lever go a couple months ago. We got a whole arsenal of different short sizes. And pretty much what we'll do is we just rotate them all through. So say we have 15 people going in the morning. The first group will start at 6 a.m. The next group will get there at 6:30, warm up on the treadmill, and be ready to go by 6:45 a.m. That group that was on the lever will switch back to the treadmill for the cool down, and we just kind of rotate through for like a 3-hour block, throw all those shorts in the wash, and they're ready to go by the next session.
That's pretty good. That does sound like you guys have it down to a science. Yeah. That's pretty impressive. But having 3 lever systems does help, have that flexibility to get more guys using the treadmills all at once. This is really great. So outside of some of that aerobic work for the 800 crew, are there any other specific sessions that you're using the system for them?
Yeah. And I mean, I think what I've seen a lot is being able to use a lever for that 4A group has been great to get their aerobic stuff or their aerobic capacities higher and then do a lot of those higher end workouts. But at the same time, it's also been great for some people that might be coming down to the 800, maybe a 5K guy or even a 10K guy, and maybe their body just can't handle a whole lot of that speed work. So being able to do that on the lever, and again, how can we simulate a workout that we would do on the track or maybe hill sprints? How can we simulate that on the lever and doing it with them as well? So very similar to the sprinters, though maybe it's just like 5 times 10 seconds hill sprints with a long recovery and just doing that on the lever instead of a hill.
Yeah, no, that's good. Kind of curious on this point too. Have there been any sessions that you found that don't make sense to do it unloaded?
There's been a few. I think the ones that I think, at least from what I've seen, are most difficult to kind of do unloaded is just really, really high end stuff. So I think of like VO2 max stuff for 800 runners. Like they are going to get, for lack of a better phrase, they're going to get eaten alive by that kind of work. So maybe, especially like a first year who's never even touched anything like that. So if I can introduce it to them on the lever and slowly work them into that kind of work on the lever, and then get them to a place where they can do that on the track, I think that certainly helped us kind of progress. I think at the end of the day, the goal is always going to be, all right, now how can we replicate what we're doing on the lever, on the track, or on the road, or wherever we're at? But I think that lever is a great segue to get us from point A to point B, because I think there's always going to be a 8.5.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a good point too. So it's really just, you're strategically really using the system to get the athletes prepared to hit those workouts outside.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so what would you say, like, if we're going to take the middle distance group with their 9-day microcycle, how many sessions in those 9 days are with the lever system and how many are outside?
Yeah. So like honestly, like if I think about our 800 room right now, it's a lot of people that were pretty successful in the 400 in high school and they bumped up. So like a lot of the endurance stuff they've never truly done. So more than likely, at least for the first couple months to get them kind of adjusted to volume, I'll probably even have them do some easy runs a couple times a week. They might do long runs once a week on the lever. And then they're certainly going to do that one time a cycle, that high end aerobic workout, whether it's a tempo, whether it's like some kind of anaerobic threshold or whatever it might be for that week. They'll certainly do that on the lever. And then I kind of progress them, how can we start doing a little bit more easy runs outside? How can we progress to doing a long run outside? But it certainly is all going to start on the lever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what do your athletes have to say about training so much on the treadmill and like with the lever system? Do they like it? Do they like, it's probably new for a lot of them at first. Is it a pretty easy segue for them? And do they end up enjoying it? Like, can you talk us through just your team's views of it?
Yes. So I think, I don't think they're a huge fan of the long runs on the treadmill. Yeah. Because I can get kind of boring really quick to be on the treadmill for 70, 80 minutes. Mm-hmm. But I think one thing that they certainly see is they see the value in it. And I think that they can certainly see the needle moving in a lot of different areas in the training. There's a couple in particular that I didn't use a lever with as heavily as I probably should have last year. And now that they've been using it more consistently, I think they're starting to see, okay, I'm doing a lot better in these kind of workouts outside than I ever have in my life. Like I'm able to actually get through these workouts feeling good, feeling strong. And then I think the other thing is, they're just feeling more recovered and more fresh.
Yeah. It's a good point to make. So one, they're recovered, so ready for workouts. And then two, you're using just the progression. It sounds like you're using the progression really strategically to bring them down to, they just have confidence at that point to start hitting the paces that you're trying to get them to hit once they're outdoors. Right.
Yeah. And I mean, I think a simple tempo workout is a great example. So generally what I'll try to do for our 400, 800 group is if I can get them up to close to 5 times 4 minute at tempo or so with maybe a minute or so recovery, then I can take them out to the track and, they can probably do close to 3 by a K or 4 by a K at that exact same pace. And I know for a fact, if I started doing that on day one, that would not be good. But, being able to progress them up to that point has been really, really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So what type of feedback or insights could you give a coach that is interested to start going down this path with their athletes? Because it doesn't sound like overnight you just jumped into these, big lever sessions on day one. It was a progression for yourself. What would you say for a coach that's interested in this, like next steps to take just to see understand this world a little bit better?
So I think similar to what I did, I think just kind of keep it simple to start. So truly what I did is, if I had a group that was doing a workout on the track or the cross country course, I would think, okay, how can I simulate this exact same thing on the lever and treadmill? If they're doing Ks, okay, so it's going to be about 3.5 minute reps, maybe 3 minute reps, depending on who it is. What is that pace going to look like? What is the mileage breakdown going to look like? What's the volume going to look like? What's the recovery going to look like? So I think it's truly as simple as starting like, okay, if you have a workout that might be really, really hard for a 400 or 800 person aerobically, let's put them on the lever. Let's do something very, very similar. But I think the other nice thing about being on the treadmill is that you can control so many different pieces of it. It's a very monitored, it's a very controlled setting. Yeah,
that's good. Is there anything else that you'd like to share that I didn't ask about, like how you're using it with the team, or how, or even how like your athletes have responded?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only other thing I'll add, and I guess I'll give a shout out to the guys over at Moxie. It's called NEARS. I'm not sure if you ever heard of it. So a muscle oxygen sensor. So we've been able to pair that up with the use of the lever, and we've been able to get some really, really cool physiological data and some insight on that as far as looking at their muscle oxygenation as well as their hemoglobin, heart rate, a lot of different really cool things. So I think those two tools are at the top of my list. But yeah, I mean, the lever has certainly been really, really huge for us and certainly pushing us forward, especially with that middle distance group.
Cool. Yeah. And as we kind of close here as well, like any standout performances that you can kind of walk us through the effect part of the cause?
Yeah. I mean, I guess I have to get a shout out to Tana. She just recently, like a few months ago, got third place at Outdoor Nationals. And she's back this year. We've been using the lever quite a lot, and she is still moving the needle, still getting better. So I'm really, really excited to see what she does, especially now that we've kind of refined this system. And she is a big fan of the lever. That's
cool. Very cool. Awesome. No, I love it. Thank you for sharing everything that you did. I think just getting this, ability to just peek into the Goucher world a little bit and understand how you are incorporating the system with everyone from your 200, 400 group all the way up to your distance crew. So definitely appreciate you coming on, and thanks for sharing what you did.
Yeah, thanks for having me. 3,
2, 1, yeah! Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you're interested in learning more about incorporating the lever system into your training, follow us on Instagram @LeverMovement, or even follow me on Strava to learn how I incorporate lever into my training for ultras. Until next time, keep running.